this lab assignment on shot composition and movement, I'm going to be demonstrating some of the basic moves in film. So I'm using a Canon 5D here. It's a digital single lens reflex, or DSLR, and you can use whatever kind you want. This is for the tripod mount, and I'm also going to be demonstrating the handheld, sometimes shoulder mount, depending on what kind of setup that you have. First, we'll start with the pan. Okay, panning left and panning right is the way it's done. So pan left, and notice that as I pan left, it's my arm that's moving right. So it's sort of the opposite of what you might think logically. It's not exactly and perfectly intuitive, but the visual is moving left while the hand is moving right. So some people have a little trouble with that. I know I did the very first couple of times that I tried it. So it comes very naturally after a while. So that's panning left and panning right. And hopefully you have a nice fluid head tripod like this one so that it's very, very smooth. And that's ideally the way you want the move to be, okay, unless you're using some sort of shaky cam effect. Now I'm going to demonstrate the tilt, okay? The tilt is just the opposite of the pan. And remember, it's pan left, pan right, tilt up, tilt down. It's not pan up and pan down, okay? People do use those interchangeably. It's not correct. Your choice, okay? So you unlock the tilt lock, and we're tilting up, and notice that my hand is going down on the handle when I'm tilting up, and tilting down. My arm is going up. So it's the opposite of the movement of the image on the camera. So I'm going to lock that down. This is something very important to always remember, and especially if you're going to be leaving the camera setup, that you always lock your tilt. You don't want your camera falling down like that while you're gone. You never know what's going to happen. It can throw it off balance. Not as much with a DSLR, but if you've got one of those bigger cameras, and especially if you're in a professional situation, I've seen people taking off their stations when they've got these, great big Fujinon lens type cameras, and they walk away and their camera goes sailing down, and who knows what might happen. But anyway, it's very unprofessional to leave your camera without locking it, both tilt and the pan lock. There's a pan lock on the back of these as well. Okay, so remember that. That's very important, especially if you get into a professional situation. So if you take a look at this assignment sheet, you'll see the shot list that I have laid out for you. You've got shots with both the tripod and handheld. And again, the handheld can be shoulder mount, or you could be carrying it down below, depending on what kind of shot you're going to be doing. Okay, so you've got one shot each. You've got the movement, zoom in and zoom out, pan left and pan right. If you're using a DSLR, you'll be zooming manually. And this is the zoom ring right here. So you'll be moving counterclockwise from behind the camera to zoom in, and clockwise to zoom out. And that moves the optical elements inside of the lens, closer or further away. And in this assignment, you'll be doing a rack focus from a foreground or near field subject to a background or far field subject. And I also want you to notice something on the focus ring movement that may seem a little bit counterintuitive. In order to move the focal field into the far field, into the background, you rotate counterclockwise. Now, normally we think, okay, if I'm going to be moving forward, like screwing something like a light bulb in, I would be rotating clockwise to move forward. But that's not the way it works. You have a narrow depth of field, a field of focus. You'll be moving it forward into the background or away from you by rotating counterclockwise. And you're moving the focal field towards you by rotating clockwise. So depending on the kind of camera that you have, you may or may not be able to work manually like this with either the zoom or the focus. So if you're using a smartphone or if you're using a consumer level camera, that's fine. Just do what you can with what you got. On the handheld shots, you'll be panning left and right and tilting up and down. Now, the way I've got this set up with this Sony camcorder is shoulder mount. This particular one slides out and rests right on the shoulder, and that helps steady the shot. But it also kind of limits you on your height. So I'm going to show you another couple ways to do that as well. But panning left, panning right, and back center. Tilting up, and tilting down, and then back to center. If you're working outside, and especially if it's very bright and sunny, this LCD monitor probably won't be bright enough for you. So what you would do is you need some sort of a viewfinder, at least to get your optimum visuals on focus and composition. So that this type just latches on there. You may have another type, hopefully. If not, get some sort of a sunshade or something like that. And especially if you're working in manual focus, you need to be able to get it, zoom in on that subject, get it as sharp and as clear as you can, then zoom back to your shot. If you're working with a consumer camera and you don't have a handle, you can hold it by the body or however works for you ergonomically. On this one I have a handle, so I can move it up or down. This is called pedestaling. Pedestaling up, pedestaling down. And what I'm doing is moving in three-dimensional space. That's what separates it from tilting up and down, which is around an axis. Same with the pan, left and right, as opposed to trucking and dollying. The difference is you're moving in three-dimensional space. So here's a dolly, dolly in, and dolly out. Truck left, truck right. And you can do it at different levels. You can dolly in and then come up tighter and dolly out, go down low. Any number, any variation of different moves in three-dimensional space. Now, of course, this is all handheld, so there are limitations. Most cameras have digital image stabilization, which helps a lot, but you can't rely on that completely. And then you do also have some image stabilization programs in After Effects and Adobe Premiere. And then there's also the tracking shot. So if you're following somebody or following something, like following a car, that's a tracking shot. When you're talking about a tracking shot, normally you're staying about the same distance from them. They might be coming a little bit closer to you or moving a little bit further away from you. But essentially a tracking shot is moving along with a moving object. Here you see a tripod dolly setup. And they're pretty inexpensive these days and pretty lightweight because of the lighter weight of the cameras these days as well. This is a tripod dolly setup with the DSLR. And what I like to do before I start the move is set the wheels in the direction that I'm going to go. If you have a nice smooth surface, we're on a carpet here, it's moderately smooth, but because of the image stabilization and some of the warp stabilizer effects that you have available, you can get a pretty decent smooth move if you want. Now what I like to do is, before I make the move, I like to set the wheels in the direction that I'm going to go. So I'm ready to truck left, got my wheels set facing left, and I start my move, and action. So nice and smooth. And then I'm going to truck right, so I set my wheels going right, and action. Nice and smooth. So you might be doing a passing shot where you're passing past your subject, or you might be doing a shot where you're panning while you're trucking left and right. And then of course there's the dolly in. So I set my wheels going forward towards you, and action, dollying in, nice and smooth. And going to be dollying back or dollying out, dolly back.
Take a look at some of these examples from my classes at the University of Houston, and you can use them to help guide you in what's expected in this assignment.